2757.
With the power of Tandem HR, you are in the fast lane on Main Street with Get Down to Business with Shalom Klein, the show for business and jobs. Now, the champion of networking, the advocate of jobs, the guru of business, your host, Shalom Klein.
That's right. We are all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship and business. We talk a lot about business here. You are on with Get Down to Business, and I'm your host, Shalom Klein. Remember, you can always download podcasts from Get Down to Business on my website at shalomklein.com. And while you are there, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Shalom Klein. It's going to be a jam-packed week of content and information that you won't want to miss. It's a live show. You could call us at 312-642-5600, 312-642-5600. And this week we have a jam-packed lineup of guests, beginning with Greg Jaeger from USAA. Get Down to Business is powered by Tandem HR, your solution center. You can find them online at tandemhr.com or give them a holler at 630-928-0510. That phone number, once again, is 630-928-0510. And as always, check out their tips online at tandemhr.com. So a fascinating piece in the news right now is really about real estate home sales. And obviously, we've all been following the news from the Fed about the recent minimal rise in interest rates. And everybody knows that winter isn't a good time to sell a home. But here to question that notion is Greg Jaeger of USAA. Greg, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Shalom.
So, Greg,
good evening.
Good evening. So, Greg, you believe that it's possible that the winter months you might actually be able to get sold a little bit faster.
That's true. Not only do I think it, but there's really statistics out there with the National Association of Realtors that prove it. That, you know, the real point is that, you know, because there's so much less inventory out there of people putting their homes out there for sale, the buyer who is actually out there and seriously looking in the winter, you know, if your property is a standout property and well prepared to sell, you really do have a better chance of getting it sold, frankly, with less negotiation and a faster marketing time.
Interesting. So let's jump into the home buying process. How can our listeners who might be on the purchasing side of things, how can they perhaps what tips do you have for them in the process of the move? How can they save money? And what tips do you have for them as they look through the market? So
the buyer in the winter tends to look like a different kind of buyer than in the summer. If you think about it, I think that the primary driver for why so much buying and selling happens in the summertime is that families, you know, with children, especially those in school, they don't want to uproot them unless, you know, it's a corporate relocation or those kind of things. But if they have the choice, they don't want to uproot them in the middle of the school year. So that's what forces that, you know, to look like families in the summer. In the winter, you have empty nesters, people that are, you know, experienced. They've been through the buying and selling process multiple times. They tend to be a little bit better heeled financially than the family units that are moving during the summer, just generally speaking. But to come to your specific question about how can they save, let's say that they need to have something. They want to do something as they move in. They want to repaint the house. They need carpeting, whatever, something that requires a contractor. I think that, you know, during the summer months when most contractors tend to be fully engaged and are more difficult to get and to come to a site and do a job and do it timely, they can charge whatever they want because they're so much in demand during the summer. During the winter, that purchaser has the ability to negotiate more on price. And I'll use a specific one because it applies to the move. Moving services, the price for a professional mover can be as much as 30% lower
Wow.
during that off-peak season.
And
in
it's
the
not
winter
just contractors or movers. Likely the inspectors, perhaps some of the appraisers, they all have a little bit more time on their hands. And time is money. And as the saying goes, an unused hotel room certainly doesn't make any money. So no question, taking advantage of those savings during the winter months make sense. So back to the seller's side, how can a home seller better prepare their home or their property for sale during the winter months?
I'm a big fan of using, a professional, a real estate agent. An individual can go it alone in terms of preparing their house, but there are nuances that are very different about having a home ready to sell in the winter than in the summer. Just think about it right now. I think in Chicago, you're in the same time zone that I am in Texas, Central. So it's 6 p.m. Think about if you and I were to drive up to a home at 6 o'clock this evening and how different that house would look at 6 p.m., here on January 10th versus June 10th. The sun's, it's still daylight. On June 10th, it's dark and dusky at 6 o'clock on January 10th. So, what does a real estate agent tell them? They're going to tell them, they may tell them you need to beef up the exterior lighting. You may need to move lamps around and increase wattage and that kind of stuff in lamps and light fixtures, even inside, because you don't have the filtered sunlight coming in. How do you prepare the home in the summer when the grass is green and the trees and bushes have leaves on them and the flowers are in bloom? In the wintertime, we don't have any of that. So what are the tricks of the trade that help with that curb appeal so that when somebody pulls up, they're finding that home attractive enough to draw them in to come inside.
And you
really
know this because you are a former real estate agent, so certainly you have a unique perspective, not just being the vice president at USAA Bank, but also thinking about the historical knowledge. So what kind of buyer may come through a home during the winter months as opposed to perhaps the rest of the year? And of course, we know that here in Chicago and likely really this entire area of the Midwest, the months of winter, spring, and fall are certainly blurred. But is there a different profile of buyers?
There really is, and that's a great question, Shalom. Like families and, people who are sort of time-bound to move in those months. In the winter months, it tends to be somebody who doesn't have to move in that specific time window. They have the luxury of moving when they want. They tend to be older. They tend to be empty nesters. You tend to have investors, a lot more of that makeup than the family unit type movers that show up during the summertime.
Interesting. So again, Greg Jaeger, vice president at USAA Bank, says that winter is a time that people should not give up on the real estate market, that there is actually hope. There is a possibility of a sale as well, and some really great tips, both for the seller as well as for the buyer to select a good realtor, to select professionals, but also take advantage of the timing. Because you can actually save money on some of the costs of those professionals, including inspectors, appraisers, bank and title processors, and, of course, the movers and the contractors as well. So, Greg, fascinating advice from somebody who has lived this process as a former real estate agent. If our listeners would like to learn more about the advice that USAA Bank has, how can they learn more and get a hold of you?
We have, I'll give you two ways. One of them is to go to our website, USAA, that's 2A's.com /find an agent. That will help somebody find an agent in our program, as well as give them, a lot of this helpful information can be found on our website. In addition, if somebody felt compelled to call us, 800-531-8722 or 800-531-USAA. Then they can reach us as well and talk about our Real Estate Rewards Network.
Fantastic. Greg Jaeger of USAA Bank, we appreciate your time, your advice, and certainly we'd love to talk to you when the warmer months are upon us for some additional advice as well. But until then, enjoy the rest of the weekend. And after the break, we've got another fantastic guest. David from Century Security will be joining us. We've got Avi Lesser, an ambassador for Keshet. We have Michael Stewart talking about business succession planning. We've got a great lineup of guests for you. Don't touch that dial. You're listening to the show that's all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. Get Down to Business is brought to you in part by Everett Wealth Solutions, a registered investment advisor and financial planning firm, a fiduciary advisor that helps you create your personal financial wealth. You can give them a call at 708-771-7777. And just today, I heard of a happy client of Chris Everett, of Everett Wealth Solutions and Everett College Funding, somebody who had FAFSA questions. So give Chris Everett a call at 708-771-7777. Once again, the show that's all about small business will be back in just a few moments. Check out my website, shalomklein.com, where you can download podcasts from this show.